Frozen is known as a Victor expert, playing that champion in solo queue before it really became a top pick here in Korea. There is the Varus ban, and that's just smart on the blue side because you don't want that to come in as a last pick for Frozen.
The bans are coming through very quickly. Kalista, Thresh, and Ryze join the ban pool, so you were actually very predictive. They're respecting the power of Ignar's Thresh and banning their way. Gragas jungle banned against Tucson.
Yeah, so Tucson does. He will probably default to Sejuani. LeBlanc actually going to be banned by IM. That is a bit of a puzzler for me, considering that they are on red side. They could have just taken it. Very safe pick. And Crown has played some LeBlanc, but it certainly hasn't been a world beater. Now there is Sivir.
But think of the power that could be put over on red side. Alistar is available, not picked. We just mentioned that Ignar's Alistar is something to be feared. Sivir Alistar almost seems to be the gold standard of completed bot lanes that people are able to assemble, but there's a lot of strong champions, and in fact, IM priority on Rumble and Rek'Sai in the first round.
Yeah, the Rumble and Rek'Sai, they still don't have a good, solid primary engage yet. And Ignar, you know, he plays Thresh, he plays Alistar, and he plays Janna most of the time. So will he go for a Janna here? It doesn't have a lot of synergy, generally speaking, with that Rumble. You're going to be running a disengaged composition, but we'll see how IM actually rounds out their comp. Instant Nidalee lock, that is. Very Eve. And there's the Alistar coming through as well.
It's already got CC in the bottom lane. You really want someone like Maokai in the top lane if you really want to have a lane for Nidalee to gank. She's a bit feast or famine when it comes to her role in the jungle. With her, all the attention in terms of nerfs on her base stats and her jungle clear, her ganks are still super powerful, but anything to make them more reliable, like targeted CC, really builds her up and makes her that snowball champion we know she can be.
Well, Samsung right now is setting up to have a pretty nice pick composition. They keep going this direction. They have so many options to create a pick with the speed, the mobility that they have. And are we going to see this Nautilus, or Ignar could go on the Annie for some more hard engage and lockdown? Annie Victor, not be a surprise. And there's the answer to their primary engage, and Frozen will get a big, big comfort pick for him.
Where will Samsung go with the West of their draft? They're not really pigeonholed into anything other than requiring some sort of engage tank. But they're not actually going to go for an engage tank. Sinking something out of Smeb's books and actually going for a top lane Riven.
Well, we saw how well Someday did in this Riven Rumble matchup just the other day. And granted, there was that Rumble dying to Wolves from Spenu, right, at level 1, which did set him very far behind. But it's a tough matchup for Rumble to deal with because of Riven's all-in potential. And there's an incredible amount of burst damage if this Nidalee can really get into the top side and follow up on a Riven engage with a spear. That could potentially be a very easy kill on the Apple's Rumble.
It's gankable in the early game, and it also snowballs into what is just an unmanageable lane for Rumble. Whatever he gets, unless we're talking about 3,000 or 4,000 gold lead, he cannot deal with the Riven split push in the late game. In general, Rumbles have to build for team fights rather than necessarily having the freedom to stack armor for lane. So we'll struggle against Riven, but what a squishy lineup we're talking about from Samsung. There is the targeted CC, so there is the potential maybe even mid lane ganks coming through onto Twisted Fate from the Nidalee. But in the late game, if they ever go for a split push and Annie gets her flash Tibbers on, that is a squishy, squishy backline for LCIM to try and overrun.
That's true, but Samsung here, the team that has that incredible pick potential. They've got the mobility from Nidalee and the single target burst. You have a great 1-3-1 split push with Riven and Twisted Fate in this lineup. So with great poke from Samsung and Nidalee in the mid lane. So this composition going to be looking for picks. And I agree, if you get to that late game and you have to 5v5, you're probably doing something wrong as Samsung. Just go for those picks, start snowballing all these damage threats, and then focus on a split push come the mid and late game.
I can definitely agree with that. It feels like any team that really gets on top of either the objectives, whether it's gets the lead on the Dragons or starts to take turrets, Twisted Fate comes in general, build Lich Bane, you can overextend and know Twisted Fate is going to react very fast with CC, so Samsung get ahead, I can like it, but in the backline, Vayne's pretty safe. It's going to be hard for Samsung to get on top of her, barring Twisted Fate getting a really good pick. So I actually like both comps, and it's not like IM don't have a comp that could really monopolize Dragon with the likes of Rumble Rek'Sai.
Yeah, absolutely. So interesting compositions coming in. Samsung has seen success with the Twisted Fate. Samsung does their best when they're on these pick comps. So can they execute once again? Luna won't be on the bar this time, but let's get into the game and see if Samsung can make it work or LZ will win the 5v5. All right, we're in game one. Samsung Galaxy versus Longju, Incredible Miracle. And everyone just starting to fan out right here. Ignar with that stun already built up with the W on the Annie. And Luna going to face check a brush, but he's going to donate some money, get his pockets picked a little bit. Wow, starting Q. Interesting.
And showing the Q as well. Got 8 gold from the first auto attack himself. Alistair is trying to equalize the gold out as much as possible. 541 to 523.
Look at this. A little bit of a bait right here. Crown picking that gold card.
8-second window till that expires.
Oh.
Ignar.
Oh, wow. Uh-oh. This could actually be very bad for Ignar. There's the exhaust going down right away. Stun, flash, pulverize, and goodbye, Ignar. First blood to Crown. Wow, that was some fun mind games right there. You definitely do not expect the mid laner to be in that brush at level 1.
It is really interesting pathing from Samsung. Crown himself could have gone for a second Dorrance for even safer mid lane, but goes for the boots. Boots 4 pots was a regular start for Twisted Fate. So now he has the flexibility to move away from the Rek'Sai pressure if he chooses to gank mid. It's a nice advantage for Samsung early. Wow,
I'm a little bit surprised that Ignar would make that decision to walk forward once he saw the Q. A little bit dangerous right there. Of course, Crown will get to lane a little bit late. He'll be just fine to start working on that back line with the red card.
What a weird and wonderful meta it is, Monte Cristo, where Riven top is becoming a thing that now 3 teams are playing in Champions.
I love it, Papa Smithy, because think about the top lane right now. Think about why this is so exciting. You know, for the first time, we have so many picks available in mid lane and top lane. You want to play a tank in top lane? Okay. You want to play Rumble up there? You want to play a caster? You want to play Vlad? Fine, fine, fine. And then now we've got some big burst champions, Echo, Riven, highly mechanical champions coming into the top lane as well. It's just a very exciting time for team compositions and strategy.
So what this has meant in bottom lane is that Ignar has flashed down what is already a tricky lane for Vayne. Annie is now super difficult. They have to respect Samsung incredibly in this situation. So it feels like Civ is going to have free reign of bottom lane, and Raw just has to deal with the fact that his support made almost an unforced error in the first couple of seconds.
Yeah, that's a big advantage. But again, we came into this game, we said some of these advantages, you know, they may not matter because both of these teams have been so poor at closing out their leads. I mean, famously, Incredible Miracle lost a game where they had all 3 inhibitors and all 11 turrets down for KT. Naked Nexus, double super minion waves coming in, and they lost. Yeah, so, you know, there are questions.
Early advantages only mean so much if you can end the game. I completely agree. Tusen's coming on to Crown. Still has flash available, but actually gets affected by the CC. Should be able to get out.
Yeah, does get out. Has that cleanse, interestingly enough, in the mid lane this game, just to deal with the Annie. That's the only reason why you'd be taking that summoner spell. I don't know about that. I think the Ghost may be a little bit better here. I feel like if you're Twisted Fate and you're getting caught out by Annie, you've probably already done something wrong.
Twisted Fate builds usually needed to itemize mobility. For example, we used to see Twin Shadows coming in from builds just to give you the chance of getting that second gold card. Then Ghost evolved as a summoner spell choice so you could get it. Now suddenly, the second gold card doesn't quite have the mobility to necessarily pick that up unless he goes for specific itemization around it. So pick potential from Twisted Fate. The initial pick, it's always going to come, but the secondary pick might be tough.
That's right. Tusen right there just looking for an angle coming in through the Dragon Pit, but Fury and Luna playing pretty passively now in this lane and not going to be attempting too much IM down on that bottom side. Meanwhile, Kuve and Apple continue farming up right here. Apple not having issues in terms of CSing, in terms of farming just yet. No early moves from the junglers either, so Eve just going to go back. Interesting build. Eve generally likes to get a very early tier. Not this game.
Yeah, obviously, the extra AP will help with the power of his ganks, but just makes them less reliable. It's less likely a chance that you're going to be able to clear the jungle as fast without the big mana stacking coming through. I expected a lot of people to be, especially the junglers, to be around the top lane just because both of these champions overextend when they're trying to harass. Using either of the Q abilities to harass the enemy will push your wave. So I expect the junglers to visit, but maybe we're going to have to wait till Twisted Fate hits 6 to see action around the top lane.
Well, there are some wards in the top side as Kuve is pushing for it. Eve is down here, though he is seen in the river. And he's going to come through and start to clear out some of these tunnels. Ignar holding back, waiting to see if Eve is interested in getting some poke down, but he is not, just back on racing through the jungle right now. And Crown and Frozen. It's been a very farm-centric game, which I'm sure IM is happy with. But that level 6 from Crown's Twisted Fate is going to be coming up very soon. And at that point, we may see some shenanigans begin.
And it feels like IM's biggest weakness as a team. We see Luna actually get to engage a lot of burst damage onto Raw, but the back end of the Boomerang Blade doesn't hit, so Raw can stay in lane, albeit very low health.
Yeah, very low health, no more pots either. Fury still has his health pots, so even though this lane is, it was kept up early by Roar, this is going to be the point where he has to go back, where they are definitely going to lose some CS on the Vayne, as you would expect. But here's Apple, equalizer dropped, and that's the wind slash, getting the execute onto Apple. Ooh.
As we jumped into top, you could actually see the Prowl, the passive proc, was already on top of the Rumble, so you can, of course, take from that the spear had been hit, the assassination comes through. We were waiting for that attention up top. It didn't even require Twisted Fate.
No, didn't yet, and that is very scary because the snowballing now that can come in on this Riven is absolutely crazy. The number of dives, I mean, if we think about how mobile that combination of TF, Nidalee, and Riven is, it's going to be a lot more lockdown, and Tucson has to respond to this. The question is, how is Tucson going to respond? Is he going to try and just stay bottom side, try and take away the camps from the bottom side if Eve continues to camp top and take the dragon, or is he going to try and combat this one-on-one? Wow, that was a great spear right in front of the minion wave. Threaded the needle really nicely on that one.
Yeah, max range, threading it through. Very nice mechanics coming through from Eve. You mentioned this is a priority pick for him and the team. Justifying, and look, they're back again, and Twisted Fate with the potential to join them if things get hairy.
Yeah, and Victor's already getting the blue buff right now, so there's basically a free port from Crown if he wants it. Apple knows this, so he's just going to back off right away. Pink ward in the river, so they know they've got Apple a little bit blind right now, and he's just going to not even deal with this. Watch him walk down to the Raptors instead of sticking around in lane.
It's actually something I've seen consistently from Apple, is that he understands when he's under threat, and he's happy to get denied multiple waves if that's necessary. It's notable that although he died, he still has Flash available. So, look, he's never safe against Twisted Fate, Nidalee, Riven when he's in lane, but at least he has the Summoner for some semblance of hope when it comes to the inevitable three-man game.
Yeah, he's also just going to go farm jungle camps right now. I think this is a very good decision for him, trying to play as safely as possible. And it may not matter too much if he dies, as long as he continues to get levels and not fall too far behind. But it is very important that he doesn't feed the Riven. He may not need those items, he may not need that CS, but certainly Kuve can profit massively off of having a gold lead. So some caution, I think, is well warranted, preventing the snowball from getting out of control in this game.
Apple, just in general, is got a lot of things working against him. The reality of a Twisted Fate pick, one of the reasons why this champion's always in the meta, is that he always reacts first when it comes to skirmishes and other lanes with that global teleport. So when you already have a 1v1 laning advantage, which is what Riven innately has against basically every champion, but certainly against a champion that wants to be building for team fights, building for the equalizer, compared to necessarily laning stats in Apple's Rumble, Riven will get items, she'll pick up the Tiamat, she'll have lots of wave clear advantages because, of course, Rumble's Q does reduce damage against those lane minions. And then Twisted Fate can react, so the split push should be so powered up in the late games. We see the engage coming on Tucson, gets Fury very low.
Yeah, and there's the spell shield already popped. He's going to try and get out with his ultimate. Tucson not going to be able to finish it up. Luna pops the ult himself to get out safely. There's a flash Tibbers in there just to make sure that they could get something. No teleports used, however. Crown also not holding onto, or actually holding onto his ultimate right there and just pushing forward onto the turret. Frozen made some motions down to that bottom side, but he comes back up to clear out the wave. Eve trying to get a little bit of auto attack damage. Eve is very, oh wow, Fury coming forward again. There's a headbutt out. Ignar not going to get any kind of stun right here, except for a follow-up one onto Luna, but that's not going to be enough to kill him.
Luna's super tanky, doesn't have the ultimate, so has to back away. Crucially, IM committed 3 summoner spells. They want to get something. They couldn't get a pick. They're on top of this dragon. The ward times out, but it doesn't look like Samsung in any place to contest.
IM did a good job, chunk out that bot lane, then immediately go for this dragon. Apple is starting to get very nervous now, and he should be. There is the port coming in. Gold card into a spear and a kill. Apple, oh, gets the flash, but Crown still finishes him off.
There's just nothing he can do whatsoever. Yeah. He can't hang 1v1 with the Riven, then finds multiple members in his lane. Apple will be lucky to be a relevant threat, even in terms of equalizer damage, because both CS and experience are being expertly zoned away from his possibility by Samsung.
Yeah, after that relatively even early game, since the pressure has come into the top side, Apple has dropped behind a level. Now, I like what IM did, though. Just some good back and forth right here. Get the dragon, and then Samsung responds appropriately, punishing them for it with the death of Apple. So the question is, can IM snowball off this dragon? Because Apple, even though he's been denied, still going to be useful with that equalizer in the mid-game team fight. So if they can continue to get dragons, it will be worth having him die a few times early in this game.
Yeah, fighting around dragons is definitely their hope, but as we mentioned, split pushing is what Samsung's going to be focusing on. So I think both teams in the early game have gotten, say, the first objective towards their victory condition that they wanted. But Samsung in general, it feels like they have the more reliable options because they have split push and they have that global threat from Twisted Fate. They're all in on dragons, and that's always a risk.
And I love seeing how TFs build, because there is a very big difference between what your power is early in the game when you only have 1 or 2 items on Twisted Fate, and it tells you a lot about how a TF player should be playing. In this case, you want to go Lichbane first, you need to split push. This is a split pushing build on TF, which means that they need to get control over the bottom side so that they can get the Riven into the mid lane and start to really put even more pressure on with the Twisted Fate, because the cooldown boots and the Sheen or the Lichbane are just going to chew through these turrets.
It's one of those situations also where they want to break the outer ring of turrets and just start overextending with all their globals and the general mobility. Riven and Nidalee, super maneuverable champions. Sivir has the ultimate as well to move between lanes. If they can break some outer turrets, they can create a situation where, okay, fighting Dragon 5v5 is hard, but if they can push the waves and get exclusive wards around that particular area, if they have their most powerful champion split pushing in the bottom lane, suddenly it becomes that much more difficult for IM to fight.
Okay, and there's an engage right there. Ignar just gets destroyed. Chain CC'd by a great flash. Frozen down there. Kuve's in with his ultimate, hopping around. But Tucson escapes through the tunnel. They're still going to get a blue buff, however. Wow, that was a very sudden fight, but Samsung playing great with this Twisted Fate this game.
And it's no coincidence they're fighting around the bottom side. There's no dragon to fight about, but if they break this bottom turret, move Riven to split push in that area, suddenly dragon is that much more difficult for IM to pick up. So for the first 10 minutes, focusing all their attention around top lane, it's no coincidence that now the attention is all around the dragon area.
Right, and they had the teleport advantage as well, and with the TP advantage and the TF, that was basically just destined to be a 5v3 scenario. So a very easy dive, but Samsung doing all the right things. And, you know, this is much more of the Samsung that we saw earlier in the season. They're playing out their win conditions really well this game. They're executing nicely around the cooldowns of their enemy. They had a tricky level 1. I like this composition a lot. And this Samsung didn't show up in the past 2 weeks, which is unfortunate. They didn't really come to play against Najin or Anarchy. And maybe they're a little bit back on track now when we saw them play against teams like the Coup Tigers and SKT.
It's notable that when Samsung's on form, they're debuting something new from Cuve. Usually, actually, in fact, of course, we saw the top lane Rek'Sai, really great priority. Cuve playing that champion very well despite not picking a win up with it. now going towards a pure carry top. I think it's no coincidence the last couple of series where Samsung really haven't been competitive, they've tried to play the meta and they just unfortunately haven't done it as well as their opposition.
Well, Papa, with all the Riven picks these days, I'm not convinced that Riven is not, in fact, the meta.
The Riven meta. It's always been the case in solo queue. That's nothing new. But in competitive play, teams are they're playing around it smart. They're not just picking Riven and dealing with it. It's either champions like Gragas where they create those multiple skirmish options, or it's just in these situations where you can overextend so safely when you have the global help of Twisted Fate.
Well, remember, though, too, that a lot of the KOO Tigers Riven compositions rely on poke. The idea is teleport Riven is fantastic for just getting into the middle of a team after they've already been poked out and just one-shotting them for the rest of their life. And that's how KOO have been playing it with kiting compositions. That's how we saw Smeb get that pentakill earlier this season on Riven. And it's sort of the same idea here. You have a Boomerang Blade, you've got the wild cards, you have the Nidalee Spears, you can poke them out, and if Cuvée comes in on your flank after that, you are just dead to rights.
And the other factor, of course, that Riven brings is execution damage. When we're talking about Nidalee hitting the spear, you focus both the wind slash and the pounce onto that single target. We're talking about massive single target damage. And a 5v4, a 5v5, difficult for this team, but 5v4, very possible.
Yeah, indeed. Well, there's Frozen, tagged by that pick-a-card and the Lichbane right now. That already completed, and Samsung going to start making a press for this mid lane. Again, they've already taken out that bot lane turret. Eve is there to provide more poke, and there's just not enough wave clear here to really deal with this for Incredible Miracle, and they're just going to deny as many creeps as possible. And are they actually going to take this turret? Looks like they want to give the gold to Fury, so he'll pick it up. And that is another outer turret. And guess what? That makes 3 for Samsung.
They get that outer ring we talked about. Suddenly the Dragon, which looked so difficult for them to opt into, of course, the first Dragon going over to IM, it's going to be completely uncontested, even though teleport is available from Apple. So with a teleport advantage, there's still just no way for them to contest these objectives when all their waves are being pushed up, and they just never have been in the position to put down wards in the last 2-3 minutes.
Yeah, indeed. Well, Apple is going to push that wave in. Cuvé's still going to pick up the minions, though. Apple's kind of gotten back into this game. He's only 25 CS down, which, when you consider what has happened to him already, is not actually that much. But his itemization, he's had to invest so much money into boots.
And this is something that Marin does on his Rumble as well. He's happy to get into the early home guards, but that's for fighting around objectives, and they've just watched an objective fall down for free.
Yeah, that is much more problematic indeed. And, you know, it's also just so much harder to snowball off the Dragon now for IM, as they let one slip through the cracks. And now with Cuvée completing that Tiamat, the split pushing is going to be in full swing as long as he can continue to lane against the Rumble. If he has to lane against the Vayne, it's going to be a different story with that Hex Drinker. He's starting to get a little bit nervous here, one would think. Crown still in base, but they could engage this, potentially.
Twisted Fate not quite in range yet, but you can see Alistair and Nidalee, Sivir, in fact, all walking towards top, relieving pressure for Cuvée. Not going to be able to take that turret. It's interesting, both mid laners, in fact, have that line wave clear that allows them to kill the minion wave as it approaches in a straight line. So straight line wave clear from both Victor and Twisted Fate means that these waves are being cleared basically instantly before they even break.
But the difference, I think, the critical difference is that when you have that straight line wave clear and you're running a poke composition or you're playing against a poke composition, you often are not going to be able to stand there and clear the wave as it comes into turret. You have to let the wave hit the turret where it's not in a line anymore. Otherwise, you're standing too far forward and you're going to get hit by wild cards or a Nidalee Spear. So in a way, I think Frozen having that line wave clear, when we're talking about how much poke he has to dodge, isn't a particularly good thing. He's just going to miss minions that way, really.
And it's important that Samsung actually took away the blue. That's why we saw them actually be able to take out the mid turret, is that the only person with any semblance of wave clear, straight line or not, is Frozen. Didn't have the blue. He's down to about 100 mana.
Here we go.
Destiny activated. No way to juke this for all.
Yeah, already there. Stun into stun. Nice chaining. Samsung's execution has been really good on this Twisted Fate. And this is how they beat the KOO Tigers, too. They played the TF with the Bard, with the Sivir, and they created picks. They got They got on to prey. They're very decisive today. Much more decisive than we normally have seen in the past couple of matches with their shot calling.
And Twisted Fate Bard is different to Twisted Fate Alistar in one way. Of course, don't have that same global Tempered Fate, but you can still turret dive so well with the Alistar, similar to if you use the Tempered Fate to disable a turret. So it was their turret game that let them down, ironically, in their last series against Anarchy. If they can be assertive, there's a lot more standing goal for them to pick up on the map, despite having that 3-0 turret advantage.
Yeah, Fury now starting to invade the enemy jungle. Another buff taken away by Samsung. Crown is sitting there eating a flame spitter. They want to get another kill. There's the gold card into the wild cards. Kuve just going to pop on in and force the flash from Apple. No more follow-up, however. But that's enough. Can they get this tower now? Huge split push.
Vayne looking for safe places to farm and not finding any. They're rotating around the empty lanes that Vayne is trying to appear in and just taking turrets under her nose. Nothing she can do. They even take this outer turret in the bottom. This is a full court press from Samsung.
I really like how after we were very critical of Samsung in the last game that they were not aggressive enough when they needed to be. What they're doing now is they're just crushing IM and taking a massive gold lead in this game by playing really aggressively, by actually executing on these dives too. They look much more confident, and they have the skills to back it up too. They've done very well mechanically in these ganks.
They just understand what they have, and that's the ability to have such a severe advantage in pushing and just in reacting to skirmishes. They're always going to be in a 5-man response, whereas it's only situationally that Frozen, for example, can be in position to impact. So much immediate power now, 40% CDR, and the Lich Bane completed for Twisted Fate. Global presence, it's on a short cooldown.
Yeah, that is pretty huge right now. Kuve also that huge threat. Last Whisper added to his inventory. So I guess he's got a bow to go with his sword now.
No Brutalizer, actually just future-proofing himself. He would have had probably more immediate damage with the Brutalizer pickup. There's not a lot of armor picked up by LZM just yet, but it's still a good use of 2,300 gold.
Yeah, definitely. So I am trying to group up. They need to force this 5v5 fight and hope that they're not too far behind in gold. But with 10k down, they almost certainly are at too much of an item disadvantage to actually win the 5v5. And they don't have any solutions to deal with Kuve's Riven.
Raw desperately needs a QSS, but doesn't have the damage necessary to do it. We're waiting to see if Annie engages. If that's going to be a Samsung engage.
And Ignar going to drop immediately. Fury going to spell shield the Tivers, look like on the backside. Crown still there. Kuve just going nuts on a turret. And now it's time to stop some recalls for Samsung. Can they get an inhibitor right now? Fury trying to follow up. They're a little bit wary about walking into that jungle, but instead they're just going to rush the mid lane, clear out the wave, and head right to the Baron.
It's so critical that they were able to do this without even using the Destiny. They didn't even have to threaten the Global to get this objective. Won't be able to take down the inhibitor as a one-man job, but as you mentioned, 4 men bashing down at this Baron, and LZIM had to react to the inhibitor damage.
Wow. This is looking like such a different Samsung team compared to the one we saw against Anarchy. Aggressive and decisive, but this has been Samsung when they play their style. They play great split push and pick comps. This is what they do well. And I like to see that we're returning to it, because when they try these more 5v5 teamfight oriented comps, it just doesn't work as well for them. Let's take a look at this replay right now. Luna with the knock-up, and here's the follow-up as well.
This is in a 4v5 situation. They get the pick, and then at this point, they're just trying to buy time for the split push. You can see the blue pings on the minimap. Kuve having his way with the turret. They don't even have to use Destiny to stop the recalls. They have so much mobility. Sivir, Nidalee, Alistar, all very quick, and Kuve gets the free objective.
I think they could have gotten the inhibitor if they had used the Destiny right there, but that's neither here nor there. Tucson going to be found in a brush, and that is not where you want to find yourself against a Riven. Is going to get the tunnel out, but his recall is delayed. And one thing about that last fight, we talked about Ignar being this great Thresh player, this great Alistar player, but Ignar straight up saw Fury spell shield, and like a full second after the spell shield, he dropped Timbers on him, and it did nothing. So that was a really weird ultimate from Annie, because it wasn't like Fury instinctively or reflexively spell shielded. It was just sitting there on him while he was autoing Annie, so not really sure about that from Ignar. Pretty poor ultimate.
When it comes to Annie, she's only really starting to come back to things in Champions. Of course, Wolf played it to great success last week, but in general, it's been more of an LPL pick than necessarily a Champions pick. For yesterday, Luna, now today, Ignar. To me, it's a champion that seems pretty straightforward, flash Tibbers, but if you miss that Tibbers, you literally contribute nothing.
Yeah, we've seen some pretty bad Annie play in the last couple of days. That's for sure. But we did see some extraordinary Annie play from Wolf last week. That was very good. Very good Annie. So now Samsung back to the split push. Again, being very decisive and aggressive in how they close this out, forcing those hard decisions from IM about which champions to allocate where. Tucson wants a flank right now, but that's not going to be an easy commodity. And there's another missed Tibbers, and Ignar just going to get Sivir ulted on and run over as Kube shows up in the back line and executes Ignar.
Just completely executed. 8 seconds of reveal onto Vayne means she can't do anything. She cannot be the slippery threat that she's known as. It doesn't matter that the 5v5 comp that's been assembled by M is stronger on paper. It doesn't matter when you're 16k gold behind.
Not much matters in League of Legends when you're 16k gold.
It's only at 26 minutes too. We're not talking about a 50-minute advantage similar to the one that IM just couldn't put KT away with. This is a massive, massive advantage for Samsung.
Wow. This is definitely not what I expected coming into this match, Babasmidi. And Samsung just going to move forward onto this tower right now. They want to take as much of this base as they can. No more Baron buff. They're making it work. Luna is knocked around, condemned into the wall. And Kube still wants to go 1v1 versus Tucson. He's just a distraction, though, for another dead inhibitor. And Samsung in this game, nearly a perfect game. If IM hadn't gone for that dragon, this would be a perfect game situation from Samsung. Very strong performance.
The words used to describe Samsung this game were decisive and aggressive. And to be honest, if you'd watched their last couple of series, you could only anoint them those words in an ironic sense. They hadn't shown anything of that sort of form that's got them to take games off top opposition. But throwing out their previous playbook, what a nightmare to have to scout this team. If you're scouting them based on their last 2 games, you would have thought this was going to be a straightforward game where they just kind of make poor decisions around objectives. They played so aggressively that even if they have those weaknesses in the late game, how much is that really going to count for?
Right, and Crown just, yes, he played some TF earlier this season, but they looked like they were putting such a high priority on Victor so far, and it's just been a very, very different approach from Samsung. I think after those last couple of losses where they struggled so much, I think they looked back and said, okay, well, what did we do when we're in this 2-game losing streak or 2-match losing streak where we haven't won a game, we're 0-4. What did we do earlier to take some games off of the top teams in this league? And this looks much more similar to what we saw from them early in the season.
I feel like the matchup, Twisted Fate against Victor, is one that we're going to see more and more. For example, when Xerath was really coming to prominence, people realized, okay, you can actually play Twisted Fate, match the wave clear, and have to go impact. We're going to see the turret dive coming through.
Yeah, Ignar just going to fall immediately right there. Gravity field not going to be enough to save him. And look at Kube, he's still on the flank. He's looking for that engage. There it is, he's just gonna blow everyone up. Waited very patiently to get in. Double kill for Frozen, but that is not going to be enough to save this game as the super minions tanking the turrets should mean a dead Nexus. Frozen is just cut off from this fountain right now. And is he gonna get through? No, Flash. Fury actually dies. Impressive play from Frozen on the defense right here, but there's a Lichbane and a Riven on your Nexus. He's going to get another double kill. Is he actually going to get a delayed Penta? No, not quite. Oh! Well, that's the end of the game, though.
A decisive and aggressive 28-minute win for Samsung was the last thing we expected when we came to the studio today, Monte Cristo. It's a sign of a top team, or at least a team on the up, that can throw away recent embarrassing losses and come back so strong in a game where, realistically, we didn't expect much from Samsung.
And I certainly didn't expect to open this match up. We talked about how both of these teams have been struggling to close. Well, look at this. Not even a very high kill game, honestly, all things considered. Samsung only had 10 kills, but they still won in 28 minutes. They snowballed so well off of those early ganks, getting turrets, getting barons. Great play.